The house did not stand anymore, yet the cellar remained, like a blackened mouth refusing to close. The timbers above had long ago fallen to rot and flame, leaving only splinters jutting from the earth like broken ribs. Ivy had claimed what walls were left, crawling downward into that yawning dark, as though the earth itself wished to reclaim what had been hidden there. On certain nights when the mist rolled thick across the fields, one could hear the house trying to breathe again. The groan of beams that no longer existed, the sigh of a roof that had long been devoured. And always beneath it all, the slow rasping exhale of the cellar. The villagers said it was alive. No man kept livestock near that ground, for animals balked and screamed when tethered too close. Dogs snapped their leashes, white-eyed with terror. Horses reared until their throats split with shrill whinnies, staring at the cellar door as though it were an open grave. Even children, who in their boldness often strayed where they should not, never dared draw near the charred ruin. They whispered tales instead, of chains that rattled when the night was still, of hands that reached through the cracks in the floorboards, groping for someone to pull down into the dark. And the chains were real, they hung yet, nailed to the stone like a cruel remembrance, their rusted rings clinking faintly when no wind stirred. None had the courage to cut them free. When storms rose and the air thickened with the scent of iron, the clatter would swell, until it sounded as though unseen prisoners writhed below. More than one villager, travelling home in the tempest, swore they heard weeping beneath the thunder. It is said one letter was found there, but not at first. The ruins were searched, sifted through when the family vanished. Only years later, after moss had eaten the floor and the cellar's breath had grown colder, did a boy dare crawl down into that hollow throat. His torchlight caught a scrap of paper pressed against the stones, as though it had grown out of the wall itself. It was smeared with a dark stain, brittle yet still damp at the edges. The villagers told him to burn it, to salt the ashes, but the boy kept it. He was never seen again. Sometimes on nights when the fog lay heavy, a light flickers in the cellar, not the warm glow of a candle, but a thin and pallid glimmer, as though moonlight had seeped underground. The old ones say it is her trying to write again, trying to finish what the blood would not let her say. And if one lingers too long above those ashes, the cellar begins to whisper. At first it is no more than a murmur, like a sighing breeze caught in the throat of the earth. But lean closer, press ear to stone, and you will hear words, not in any tongue known to the living, but in a voice brittle with grief, rough with chains. Some claim the voice promises freedom. Others say it begs for company. A traveller once asked a villager what dwelt below. The villager, grey and shaking, would not answer. He only said, "It remembers, that was all." For the cellar remembers every scream that once filled it, every lash of iron, every plea that went unanswered. And in the ruin of the house, in the ashes where the walls had burned, that memory festers still. The earth does not forget what it is fed, and so the cellar waits, breathing slow as sleep, hungry as winter. It waits for another step upon its stones, for another soul to listen too closely. Those who pass by swear that if you glance quickly, you can see her shadow through the cracks, though no light falls inside, a slight figure bound in chains, head bowed, swaying with each clink of iron. If you linger, you might see her raise her head, and if you linger longer still, she might raise her hand. The chains stir now as though tugged by unseen wrists. A shiver passes through the stones. A faint moan rises from the earth. The cellar door, what remains of it, creaks on hinges eaten through with rust. Though no hand pushes it open, the cellar inhales, and in the silence after, you hear the faint scrape of something rising from the ash. The letter was found folded once, as though in haste, and the edges quivered as if some trembling hand had left its panic pressed into the fibers forever. It smelled faintly of copper. Even after decades, the iron tang lingered, rising from the page like breath from an open wound. The parchment was coarse, the kind issued for accounts and ledgers, not for pleas of the soul. Yet the words carved themselves upon it in strokes sharp and uneven, written by a hand that seemed to labor against fear or fever, or both. The stains went deeper than ink, they spread in veins, branching outward like roots searching for water, until the letters themselves seemed to swell and bleed. Those who dared lift the page swore it pulsed faintly, as if some heart still beat within the folds. And under the flicker of a candle flame, the words twisted. They did not merely blur or shimmer, they bent. What was written at dusk was not the same at midnight, and what one man read in silence was not what another saw. The letter was said to begin with prayer, "To whom I may never see again." The words scratched thin as breath, yet heavy with despair. They looped once into tenderness, then broke violently into jagged strokes. The sentences stuttered, as though the writer's hand froze with each sound she heard above her. Some lines were smudged, pressed by a palm that shook with terror. It was not the voice of someone writing to be answered. It was the voice of someone writing to be remembered. The villagers who handled it whispered of curses. They said the ink was drawn from the writer's own veins, mixed with soil from the cellar floor. When held too long, the parchment left a residue on the skin, brown, sticky, impossible to wash away. One woman, bold enough to keep it beneath her pillow for a night, awoke screaming with her tongue blackened, swollen as if she had swallowed ash. "They come when the lantern burns low," the letter murmured in one line, words etched so hard the parchment tore. "They speak in chains. They do not sleep. I am not alone." No one agreed on what came next. Some claimed the letter turned into confession, naming names long buried, calling out sins that the town wished to keep beneath the soil. Others said it pleaded with the reader to descend into the cellar, to take her hand to help her finish what she could not. A few insisted the words were not even written in English at the end, but in a script older, jagged, and crawling with symbols that seemed to squirm when traced with the eye. The final lines were always the same, a blot, vast and uneven, as though the quill had been dropped in panic or torn from the writer's grasp. And beneath it, a single jagged streak that ran across the page, bright as though it had never dried. Some swore if you tilted the parchment to the firelight, the streak glistened wet, as if fresh blood still wept there. The letter cursed those who lingered on it. One farmer's wife, upon reading the last line aloud, claimed she felt her own hand begin to twitch, dragging across the table as if compelled to write something she did not know. Another man, drunk with fear, tried to burn it. The flames hissed, recoiled, and died, though his hearth was full of kindling. He swore he heard a voice whisper from the parchment as he struck his flint again, low and heavy, saying, "Do not unmake me." They buried it in the chapel once, sealed beneath stone with a psalm and iron nails. Yet when the floor was repaired years later, the parchment was found again, folded neatly, waiting. Upon the altar as though it had never left. It had grown colder, and when the priest touched it, he heard his own voice crying inside his head, repeating a name he swore he had never known, a name that belonged to the girl who vanished. The letter shifts still, even now in the hands of those who dare hold it. Its words climb and rearrange themselves, searching for someone who will finish them. Candlelight bends unnaturally across the surface, warping into shapes that look too much like faces pressed against glass. Those who lean too near swear they hear the scratch of quill on parchment, as though she writes still, furiously, endlessly, trapped between sentence and scream. And in the final curve of that last streak, in the line that is neither ink nor blood, there is a shape, the outline of a hand, pressed against the page from the other side. Midnight struck without a sound. The clock on the mantel, faithful for decades, lifted its pendulum as though to strike, and froze. Its brass heart ceased. The other clocks in the town, scattered in kitchens and parlours, faltered at once. Their ticking drowned in a silence so total it pressed upon the chest like a weight. The hour refused to pass. The air itself seemed suspended, as if the night had been caught in the teeth of some unseen beast. Held and gnawed before being swallowed whole, it was the night she disappeared. No latch stirred, no shutter unfastened. The cellar door remained closed, its swollen wood groaning faintly in the cold. Yet something passed through. A movement without motion, a taking without touch. When dawn came, her bed still bore the indentation of her small body, the pillow damp with the last warmth of her head. But she was gone, erased as though she had been pulled from the fabric of the world by invisible hands. The villagers called it the vanishing hour. They said the night itself rose and claimed her, peeling her shadow from the walls, stealing her breath from the air. Some whispered that she had walked willingly into the cellar, answering a voice only she could hear. Others swore the chains beneath had rattled so loud that night they split the silence, summoning her down like a bride to her grave. But all agreed on one thing: no one heard her scream, and that was the true horror. For even a child torn from the world should leave behind some cry. But there was none. Just the hush of broken time, and the faint rustle of bedclothes stirring without their sleeper, her mother, rising in the hour before dawn, felt the dread first. She swore the house did not breathe. The hearth ashes glowed dull, no ember cracking, no timber sighing. She pushed open the girl's door, and there lay the shape of absence, an indentation deep as though hands had pressed down, holding her there until she vanished into the mattress. On the nightstand rested a cup of water untouched. Yet when the mother lifted it, the liquid swirled with dust, as though centuries had passed since it was poured. The neighbors who came said nothing at first. They stood in the doorway, the silence spilling into their bones, staring at the bed that held no child. One old man crossed himself thrice, muttering, "The hour took her." And still the clocks remained dead. They would not tick again until evening fell the following day. When they did, they lurched forward with a violence that cracked glass and bent hands, as though the hours had not passed gently, but had been held in a fist, shaken, and hurled forward. None could agree on what time it was. Noon felt like dusk, dusk like dawn. The sun itself seemed reluctant to rise where she had been erased. The vanishing hour left its stain. Shadows in that house moved wrong, stretched not toward the light, but away from it. A mirror in the hall showed no reflection during that hour each night, only the faint outline of the cellar door below. The walls bled with condensation, beads of moisture trailing like tears. And always from somewhere deep came a faint scratching, as though fingernails dragged across stone in patient repetition. Some claimed they saw her still, a flicker in the corner of the eye. A small shape crouched at the foot of the bed, head bent, hands bound. Children dared one another to call her name in whispers. Those who did often woke with bruises around their ankles, as if small hands had gripped them in the night. The town grew sick with it. Births dwindled. Crops failed. The church bell cracked when struck, and the vanishing hour returned, not with her but with absence itself. Every year, when the air thickened and the clocks began to stammer, something was taken. A lamb bleating gone from its pen, a cradle found empty. A man's shadow peeled from him, leaving him pale and hollow-eyed until he took to the river. Time itself faltered, and with it the people. The last priest who dared speak against it gathered the letter, the chains, and the broken clock, sealing them in the cellar. He said it would keep the vanishing hour contained. He nailed the door shut, iron upon iron, salt upon salt. Yet 3 nights later, his body was found hanging from the rafters, his eyes wide, his tongue bitten through, and every clock in town stilled at the moment of his death. The vanishing hour feeds still. It creeps into the marrow of night, into the pause between seconds, into the silence where a heartbeat should be. It erases not with violence, but with a tenderness that feels like drowning, and those who have felt it swear the air grows thick, the world slows, and the whisper of chains drags them gently into nothing. On her bed, the indentation remains. It is deeper now, as if something has been climbing out instead of vanishing in. The keys have not moved in 100 years, yet they are never still. They hang from a crooked nail on the wall above the cellar stair, their metal eaten by rust, their teeth blackened by time. And yet, when the house exhales its long mournful sigh, they stir. A faint clink, a shiver of sound as if restless in their waiting. The villagers say the house keeps them alive. The villagers say the house remembers who they belong to. Each key is different, forged for a different lock. Some are long and thin, their spines worn smooth as bone. Others are jagged, cruel, their mouths gnashing like wolves caught mid-snarl. One key is fat and heavy, streaked with a green corrosion that stains any hand foolish enough to touch it. Another is bent, warped sideways as though twisted by something too strong to be human. All of them, when pressed to the skin, are cold as a graveyard in January, and all of them, it is said, open doors that should not be opened. The first to speak of it was a boy, long dead now, who swore he heard the keys whispering when the night was deep. He claimed they called his name, not in a voice of metal or wind, but in the cracked, breathless rasp of a young girl. "Turn us," she begged, "turn us and follow." The boy vanished soon after, his shoes found neatly placed by the cellar door. No trace of him remained, save for a new key on the ring. For the ring grows. No one dares count the keys anymore, for their number changes with each glance. Sometimes there are 6, sometimes 12, sometimes a mass so thick they appear like a cluster of black teeth clattering together in hungry anticipation. And when the house sighs, when the wood groans, the keys rattle as if demanding to be chosen. The old women of the town whisper that each key is a soul, forged not by iron but by suffering. They say when the cellar claimed her, it marked her with a key, and every soul taken since has been added to the ring. To turn one in the lock is to invite that soul into your body. To drop one is to summon its rightful owner. And to steal one. To steal one is to vanish from the world entirely, leaving nothing behind but the echo of your name on rusted teeth. More than one curious man has dared to try. They lift the ring, though it burns their fingers, and hold it close to their ears. And there, beneath the clinking of metal, comes the sound of breath, slow, shallow, rattling as though many chests heave at once inside the iron. If held long enough, words press against the skull. Promises, pleas, threats. Turn me, free me, let me out, or I will find another way. But no one who has tried has remained themselves. One farmer's son took a key and staggered home with it, hidden in his pocket. That night, his mother woke to the sound of the front door opening, though no hand touched the latch. She found her son standing in the yard, naked, his mouth open wide, the key lodged between his teeth like a bit. He stared at her without recognition, eyes black as oil, before turning and walking into the mist. He was never seen again. But when dawn came, the ring above the cellar stair clinked softly, and there was one more key added to its burden. Another man, drunk on despair, forced one of the keys into the cellar lock. The wood shuddered, the hinges screamed, and for a heartbeat he thought he had opened nothing more than a door. But then the chains began to stir, clattering violently below, and the moan that rose up was not the moan of any wind. He stumbled back, but the door refused to close, as if the key had welded itself into the iron. The villagers found him days later, his body slumped at the threshold, his hands gone, his face pressed against the earth in silent worship. The door was closed again. The key was back upon the ring. The keeper of keys is not merely the house. Some nights, when the fog curls low and the windows sweat with unseen breath, the ring does not hang upon its nail. Instead, it sways gently at the waist of a figure standing at the cellar stair. A figure thin as a child, head bent, hair falling in tangled strands, her hands clutching the iron like rosary beads. She does not speak, but the keys chatter for her. The sound is not random, it is laughter. The villagers bar their shutters when the rattling grows near. They say to glimpse her is to feel every lock in your body unfasten, every seam of flesh, every hinge of bone, every clasp that keeps the soul tied to its frame. And when she raises the ring, when she chooses a key, something in you knows it is already too late. The ring hangs heavy still, and tonight, as the house exhales its mournful sigh, one key loosens from the nail, falling slow as a drop of blood toward the floorboards below. At dusk, the walls betray the light. The sun bleeds long and red across the ruin, staining the stones like an open wound. Trees lean inward, their branches straining as though to blot out the last of the day. But still the light falls upon the charred foundation of the house. And there, stretching against the crumbled wall, appears a figure that does not belong. Her shadow, but not hers. Not anymore. It twists as it lengthens, bent against the angle of the sun, moving in ways the body could not. When the air is still, it trembles. When children dare to pass, it bends toward them, hungry as a wolf scenting prey. The villagers whisper of it, though they will not speak its name aloud. They say the shadow is a remainder, torn from her the night she vanished. They say it is stitched to the stone itself, as though nailed down by an unseen hand. It rises when the sun sinks, grows long and wild as twilight falls, and disappears only when the night is absolute. But even then the stones are warm where it has been, as though it lies just beneath, waiting for light to return. It does not mimic the living. Its limbs are wrong, too long, too thin, bending backward in a way that makes the eye ache. Its head is lopsided, jerking to follow those who pass. And though the mouth is never clear, there are moments, terrible, fleeting, when the stones beneath it seem wet, as though something drooled from the twisted face. Children once played dares near the ruin. They dared each other to step into the line of the shadow to see if it would cling. One boy did, bold with summer bravado, laughing as his heel crossed its edge. The laughter choked sharp in his throat. His body stilled. His eyes turned wide and glassy, reflecting nothing. They pulled him away, but his own shadow never followed again. To this day he walks with none, though his shape is clear in the sun. His shadow remains nailed to that wall, laughing in silence when dusk returns. The old say the shadow is hungry. It waits each evening for light to draw it alive, and in that brief hour of bleeding sun it watches the road. Travelers feel it before they see it. A coldness that clings to the skin, a weight in the chest as though something presses from behind. Some turn back, abandoning their path. Others press on, eyes fixed forward, never daring to glance at the wall. Yet no matter how they hurry, the cold follows them until the last crimson of day is swallowed by night. One widow, mad with grief, claimed she saw the shadow raise its hand. Not her hand, not human, but clawed and crooked, reaching. She said it beckoned her. She went to it willingly. In the morning, they found her shawl on the stones, stiff with frost, though the night had been warm. Her body was never found. Her likeness, thin, hunched, distorted, appeared on the wall beside the girl's shadow the very next evening. And there it remains, bent wrong, faces overlapping like a double exposure in some cursed glass. The priests who came to banish it fared no better. One tried to bless the stones, sprinkling them with holy water until the ground ran damp. The shadow quivered but did not flee. His words faltered, his voice catching as the sunlight drew longer and darker. His companions swore the shadow tilted its head toward him, listening. And when his blessing ended, his own silhouette remained standing on the wall behind him. Though he had walked away, he took ill within a week, his body collapsing into angles too sharp, too twisted, as though his bones bent wrong beneath his skin. The shadow is not merely absence of light, it is presence. Presence made of hunger, stitched from the scraps of her lost being. Each dusk it stretches farther, clawing across the stones, reaching into cracks, searching for something to grip. The earth chills wherever it crawls. Grass shrivels black in its wake. Even the moss recoils. And some nights, when the sunset lingers too long, when the air is thick with storm and the sky refuses to darken, the shadow grows impatient. It swells outward, pushing from the wall, separating itself grain by grain, until the stone seems to breathe beneath its weight. Those who watch too long swear its face turns, slowly, unbearably, toward them, and when it does, its eyes are not hollow. They are filled with chains. The house groans at night, but the song does not belong to it. It comes from below, from the stone throat of the cellar, from the dark earth that drinks what the living spill. At first it is only a hum, so low it presses in the ribs as though the bones themselves were strings. But linger and the hum blooms into words, words sung slow, sorrowful, each syllable dragged through centuries of grief. The villagers say it is not merely song but mourning, an endless hymn for those who never rose again from beneath the floor. The sound grows clearest at dusk, when the sun bleeds weak and the cellar yawns wider in shadow. A faint trembling lifts from the groundboards, shuddering like breath through lungs long emptied. The hymn crawls upward into the rooms above, winding through cracks in the plaster, seeping into the ears of any who dare remain. It clings to sleep, invading dreams, filling them with voices that rise and fall like chains dragging across stone. No one sings in the village after dark. Once, a girl hummed a tune near the ruins, bold and thoughtless. Her melody caught the wind, and the hymn below changed to match her. It followed her note for note, bending her innocent hum into something ragged, swollen, heavy with sorrow. She fled home crying, and by morning her throat was raw as if she had sung all night without ceasing. Her parents barred the windows, but for 7 nights they heard her voice rising from the cellar, threaded into the hymn. Though she lay in her bed choking on silence, the hymn is not only grief, it is hunger, for when the words swell they draw breath with them. Those who listen too long find themselves weakening, their chests aching, their lungs burning as if the air has been pulled from them. Some wake with dirt packed beneath their nails, as though they had clawed upward in dreams struggling to surface. Others cough bloody dust, thick with the taste of stone, and a few never wake at all. Their mouths gape open on the pillow, soil spilling from their tongues, a faint hum still trembling in their throats. The old ones say the hymn is made of all the voices swallowed there, the chained, the vanished, the ones who begged and were never answered. Their laments are stitched into the sound, weaving sorrow into sorrow until the earth itself keens like a widow. Each night it grows louder, stronger, as though the choir beneath is swelling. When storms roll across the fields, thunder cannot silence it. When frost clutches the ground, the hymn seeps warmer, steaming through the cracks. Even the church bells cannot drown it. On nights of high wind, The hymn and the bells twine together, twisting prayers into lament, lament into curse. And sometimes, though not often, the hymn changes. Its sorrow sharpens, becomes command. A word repeated, low and urgent, urging the living to listen. "Down," it moans. "Down." And the cellar door, swollen and warped with age, creaks open though no hand touches it. A draught spills upward, fetid, damp, carrying with it the reek of earth freshly dug. Those who hear the word too clearly find their feet moving against their will, shuffling toward the stair. They walk with heads bowed, as though answering a summons from a master unseen. The hymn waits for them. One villager, mad with grief for his lost wife, went willingly. He stepped into the cellar as the hymn swelled, his body swaying like a man drunk on devotion. He did not scream when the darkness swallowed him. He only sang with them. His voice rose through the boards, strong and steady. The first clear voice they had ever heard joined the hymn. It sang 3 nights before breaking into silence. When the villagers pried open the cellar, they found nothing, only his hat damp with earth. Lying at the threshold, those who swear to have heard it closely say the hymn carries names, not whole, not sharp but whispered in threads, syllables drawn out until they fray. Names of the missing, names of the dead, names not yet claimed. If one leans close to the floorboards, ear pressed to wood, sometimes one's own name trembles through, wrapped in chains of sound. And once a name is sung, it is never unsung. That soul will one day join the hymn, whether in sleep, in sickness, or in silence. The hymn rises tonight. Its low drone shivers through the floor, through the soil, through the marrow itself. It weaves with the wind, turning the fields into a sea of lament. Those who pass by clap hands over ears, but still the sound seeps in, curling behind their skulls. And now, beneath the hymn, another noise stirs, the drag of stone shifting, the scrape of nails against wood, the faint, rhythmic thud of many hands pressing against the underside of the floor, keeping time with the song. The flame has no right to live, yet it does. In the far corner of the cellar, beyond the reach of daylight, a lantern hangs crooked from a rusted hook. Its glass is cracked, its frame warped by time, its wick long shriveled to ash, and yet the flame burns. It burns with a light that is neither warm nor natural, a glow pale as marrow, thin as breath, but steady, steady in a way no living fire could be. Those who descend into the cellar speak of how the lantern seems to watch them, its glow shifting though no draught stirs the air. The flame bends toward intruders as if listening, as if tasting them. It is said the lantern has burned for centuries, that it has seen masters come and go, that even when the house lay abandoned and rotting, the cellar still throbbed with its sickly light. The villagers whisper that the lantern's fire is fed not by oil, but by the hours stolen from those who linger near. Stay too long and your reflection begins to fade. In the glass pane you appear dimmer, shadowed as though the flame is drinking from you. Old men have left the cellar with hair gone white, their hands trembling with years they did not yet deserve. A child once returned with her eyes hollow, her pupils faintly glowing with the lantern's pale shimmer, as though some of its flame had moved into her. She never spoke again, only stared toward the cellar door until her body gave out. And yet the lantern cannot be destroyed. One master, driven half mad by its glow, struck it with an iron rod. The flame only bent, guttering with a hiss before straightening once more, steady as ever. Another doused it with buckets of water, but the liquid turned to steam before it touched the glass. A third smashed it against the stones, shattering the frame, but still the flame hovered in the air unbound, until the broken pieces crawled back together around it, like bones knitting to flesh. Some claim the lantern was never made by hands. They say it was found in the earth, dug from a pit where no tree root dared spread. They say the first master of the house carried it up himself, cradled like a newborn, and hung it in the cellar, whispering words no one could repeat without bleeding from the mouth. Others murmur that the lantern is a prison, holding what should never have been loosed, that the flame is not flame but an eye ever open, ever watching, waiting for someone to gaze long enough for it to gaze back. The shadows it casts are the worst of all. They writhe against the stone, moving even when no body stands before them. Sometimes they dance like figures caught in torment, limbs bent wrong, mouths stretched wide in soundless cries. Sometimes they crawl, pulling themselves across the wall in spasms, as if desperate to reach the flame that births them. Those who watch too long swear they see familiar shapes, neighbors, kin, even their own faces, twisted and pleading in the glow. The lantern's song is silence. Where the hymn beneath the floor moans with grief, the lantern burns with a hush so complete it swallows breath. The cellar air grows thick, choked, as if sound itself refuses to live near the flame. Even the drip of water from the stones ceases when it is approached. It is in that silence the mind begins to betray itself, hearing thoughts not one's own, whispers that drift like smoke. Turn the key. Open the floor. Let us out. Some have obeyed. The last master of the house was found at the foot of the cellar stairs, his body rigid, his face lit from within as though burning. His hands were blackened, the skin cracked and smoking, though the lantern's light had never touched him. His eyes, when pried open, showed flame instead of pupil. It is said, he had tried to carry the lantern into the world above, but it would not pass the cellar door. It clung to the stones, pulling him back, rooting itself deeper. Still it burns. The villagers now bar the cellar, sealing it with boards, chains, and prayers. Yet each dusk, a pale glow seeps through the cracks, spreading across the yard, staining the ground with shadows that do not belong to trees. The livestock grow restless at night, their eyes rolling white, their bodies trembling as if they sense the light crawling nearer. Sometimes the glow flickers in the upper windows, though the lantern itself has never left the cellar, and tonight, as the hour wanes, the lantern brightens. Its flame swells larger than it has ever been, spilling its glow across the cellar walls until the figures stretch long and tall. They no longer writhe or crawl, they turn. Their faces, dozens of them, press flat against the stone, gazing outward, gazing up, as if waiting for someone above to answer their silent call. The flame hums, not with voice but with vibration, low, steady, like a bell tolling from the deep earth. The sound passes through the stone, through the beams, through the air itself, rattling the chains on the cellar door, and in the upstairs hall a second glow appears, faint at first, then steady. A lantern burning on a wall where no lantern hangs, its light spreads slowly, spilling into the rooms above. A broken mirror does not forget what it has seen. In the cellar's farthest corner, half buried in dust and cobwebs, lie the splintered fragments of glass. They glitter faintly, though no lantern or candle touches them, each shard trembling with a sickly sheen as if catching light from somewhere far beyond this world. No frame remains, no backing, only the jagged slivers, spread like the bones of something shattered long ago, something that still twitches in death. At first glance, they appear harmless, mere remnants of vanity left to rot beneath the earth. But lean closer, and the reflection betrays you, for it does not return your face. It shows instead a road, narrow, crooked, unending, a path paved in black stone, gleaming faintly as though wet, stretching into a cavern of darkness where no light should dwell. On either side of that path rise walls, not of brick but of flesh, pale and swollen, veined with blue shadows twitching in silence. No one who has gazed into the shards for long has returned unchanged. One woman, a maid who found herself drawn to the mirror's strange shimmer, swore she saw figures moving upon the road, walking in silence, their steps heavy, endless. She pressed her hand to the glass, certain she could follow, but what pressed back was colder than any grave she had known. Her scream woke the others above, yet when they rushed down, they found her body rigid. Her hand fused to the shard, the skin blistered and burned as though held against molten iron. Her eyes were open, yet she was gone. Her gaze fixed not on the cellar, but into that black road stretching forever. The mirror has since been covered, the shards heaped in dust. But dust does not silence it. The villagers say when the night deepens, when the lantern in the corner swells with its unholy light, the shards begin to hum, soft at first, then rising like a chorus of voices trapped in throats too tight to scream. The floor vibrates with it, the air grows heavy, and if one dares approach, the dust shifts, clearing itself away as though the shards demand to be seen, and what they show shifts too. Sometimes the road is empty, the cavern silent. Sometimes the walls shudder as though something inside presses outward, eager to break through. And sometimes, too often, the watchers glimpse themselves, walking upon that endless path, their faces hollow, their limbs moving without will. Whispers bleed from the glass when no one dares touch it. Come further. Come closer. There is no end but us. Children have been caught kneeling before it, lips moving as if speaking to unseen friends, eyes glazed with a distant glow. They claw when dragged away, screaming of hands pulling, of promises whispered freedom, escape, release. Yet when they wake, they remember nothing, only the taste of soil in their mouths, as though they had bitten the road itself. The oldest tale claims the mirror was never made for mortal eyes. They say it was carried up from the deep riverbed, dredged from beneath silt that smelled of sulphur and rot. The master of the house had ordered it mounted upon the cellar wall, though none recall who brought it down. When it cracked, it did not scatter like other glass, it bled. Thin rivulets, dark and slow, dripping into the earth where the soil drank greedily. Those stains remain even now, black streaks crusted into the stones beneath the shards, refusing to fade. One scholar dared to piece a fragment from the pile, binding it in cloth and carrying it to his chamber for study. He wrote of a presence within, a pull like gravity, drawing his thoughts inward, whispering in rhythms he could not decipher. His journal ends abruptly, the ink smearing across the page, the last line trembling with madness. If the path leads forward, then I have always been walking it. They found his body days later, though his room was locked from within. His mirror stood whole, polished, but there was no reflection in it, only a pale hand pressing outward, frozen beneath the glass. The villagers buried him, but the shard returned to the cellar, whole once more, as if it had never left. And still the mirror waits now. As the lantern swells above its corner flame, the shards begin to stir. Their edges grind against the stone, scraping softly like teeth upon bone. The dust lifts in thin spirals, rising in the stagnant air. Within the glass, the path stretches clearer, wider, as if drawing nearer to the cellar itself. Figures move along it, slow, deliberate, endless. Their heads tilt upward in unison toward the watcher. Not faces, not truly, just hollows where eyes should be, dark pits glistening with wet hunger. They lift their hands, palms flat, pressing against the inside of the shards, their fingers long, their nails sharp. The cellar grows colder, the silence suffocating. And then a sound, the faint crack of glass. One shard quivers violently as though struck from within. Then another, and another. The fragments leap, straining upward, aligning as if drawn by a force too strong to resist. Piece by piece they knit themselves together, reforming the mirror upon the wall, and in its surface the watcher sees not the cellar, not themselves, but the road, closer now. The figures pause at its end, standing in silence, all their hands pressed to the glass, as though it were the final veil between their world and ours. From the mirror's depth, a voice exhales, ragged and wet, "Let us step through." The letter should have withered into dust long ago, yet it breathes. Upon the warped table in the upstairs chamber, yellowed with age and sagging beneath the weight of silence, lies a single page. Its edges curl like brittle leaves, its ink faded into whispers of black, but across the bottom sprawls a smear of crimson. Not brown, not dried, but wet, wet as though written an hour ago, glistening faintly in the candlelight, like the slit throat of something freshly slaughtered. No matter how many years pass, the stain remains. The villagers say the letter was found the morning after she vanished, left unfolded upon the table as though waiting to be read. Its words, trembling and uneven, stumble across the page with a frantic hand. The sentences break, blur, scatter, as if the writer's breath failed her even as the quill moved. And at the end, no closing, no name, only that great desperate smear streaking across the paper like the lash of a wound. Men of the parish once tried to burn it. They carried it into the churchyard and set torch to its frail body. The flames curled the edges, blackened the parchment. But when the fire died, the letter remained whole. The smear gleamed brighter than before, as if mocking them. Others sealed it in a chest of iron buried beneath the ash tree on the hill. Yet come morning it lay again upon the table in the chamber, as though it had never been moved, as though the house itself demanded its presence. The old speak of it with dread, for those who read too deeply into its lines are not themselves afterward. They grow pale, their voices falter, and their eyes cloud with a faraway gleam as if they see something beyond the room, beyond the world. Some mutter in their sleep, broken words that echo the letter's final scrawl. Others wake with their hands stained red, though no cut can be found. One child, braver than sense, pressed her finger to the smear. She laughed at first, marveling at how warm it felt, warmer than skin, as though blood still ran beneath it. But when she pulled her hand away, The crimson clung to her fingertip, pulsing faintly in time with her heartbeat. The mark would not wash away no matter how her mother scrubbed. Days later, she fell silent. She stopped eating, stopped playing, and began pressing her hand against the walls, smearing them with the stain, as if writing letters of her own in a tongue no one knew. By the week's end, she was gone, vanished from her bed without a trace. Only the table upstairs bore a new page, blank but for a small, wet print of her palm. The letter itself whispers if one listens closely, not in words, but in the rhythm of a pulse soft and steady, as though a heart beats within it. It grows louder the longer one remains in the chamber, until it throbs in the bones, until the walls seem to echo with it. Some claim it can be matched to the human heart, as if the letter beats in time with the reader, binding the two together. And when one tries to look away, it slows, falters, waiting, until the eyes return, and then it begins again, stronger. The ink above the smear is no less dangerous. In candlelight the letters shift, crawling as though alive. Sentences warp into shapes that should not exist, hooks of language curving into symbols too cruel for the tongue. A man once traced them aloud, and before his voice could finish, blood trickled from his nose, then his ears, then his eyes. He collapsed upon the letter itself, his face landing in the smear. When they lifted him away, the blood had vanished from his skin. The letter gleamed brighter still. Some say the stain is not hers at all, but theirs the others, the ones whose whispers creep through the house. That the letter is their scripture, their prayer, their binding, that with every gaze, with every trembling reader, the blood thickens, grows fuller, drinks deeper. And tonight the smear stirs. A chill runs through the chamber, though no window is open. The candle gutters shivering in its wax. On the page the smear shifts, not dripping, not spreading, but swelling, as though beneath it lies a vein, pushing more blood upward into the paper. It thickens. It shines. The words above it writhe, bending, rearranging. They no longer follow her frantic hand. They twist into a new line, jagged and wet, forming shapes like letters, yet older, fouler. The sound of the pulse grows deafening now, booming in the walls, rattling the table. And then a droplet falls. Fresh, red and hot it beads upon the page, sliding down from the smear, though no hand writes, no wound bleeds. It lands upon the floorboards, where it does not soak in but spreads outward, seeping like a tide. Another drop, then another. The letter trembles as if alive, the smear splitting wider, until the whole page is slick and wet, pulsing in the candlelight. And in that moment, the letters lift. Not ink now, but raised veins, cords of flesh knitting themselves into words. The page is no longer parchment, but skin, and the smear beats, a heart sewn into its surface. The table creaks beneath it, as if struggling under the weight. And from the floorboards below, faint but certain, comes the sound of more dripping, a steady rain of blood seeping downward into the cellar, feeding what waits beneath. A house that eats memory is more dangerous than one that eats flesh. Its walls stand crooked now, bowed with rot, yet still they breathe, groaning at night as though filled with lungs of stone and timber. The paint peels in strips like shedding skin, and the windows, once proud and square, hang shattered, black eyes staring into nothing. Yet within silence reigns, not the silence of peace, but of hunger, as though the house waits for one to step across the threshold, to speak, to give it the offering it craves. For the house does not want blood, it wants names. Those who whisper her name, the girl, the vanished one, the letter writer whose blood still gleams, find their own syllables faltering. First the tongue grows heavy, slow, then the memory of self begins to slip like water through grasping hands. One man, bold with drink, spoke her name 3 times in the parlor, laughing as he did. His laughter thinned, faltered, fell into silence. His companions found him days later wandering the woods, clothes torn, lips cracked, unable to recall who he was or where he belonged. They buried him nameless, a marker with no inscription, for no one could remember the sound of him. The house holds those names still, buried in its beams, whispered through its cracks. At night the rafters creak not with weight, but with voices murmuring, a litany of stolen selves repeating, until the syllables blur into a droning hymn. To sleep within its walls is to dream of strangers' mouths, forming words you cannot hear, of being called to by a name you no longer recognize, and the cellar door is always open. It yawns at the back of the hall, blacker than shadow. its edges damp with the breath that rises from below. Chains dangle loose, as though restraints once lay across it but were torn away by something patient and patient still. The door does not slam shut. It does not rattle in wind. It waits gaping, like a grave unfilled, like a throat unchoked. The villagers say the house chooses its suppers. Some may pass through unharmed, though they return pale, their lips trembling with words they dare not speak. Others are taken swiftly, their identities unraveled before they can cry for help. Once a woman called her child's name at the door, just once, and by the time the echoes faded, the boy stood staring up at her with eyes blank as polished stone. He never answered to her voice again. The house had swallowed him whole, though his body walked still. Do not speak her name inside, the elders whisper. Do not speak your own. Do not answer when the walls call to you, for call they do. In the small hours when the lantern burns too bright and the mirror hums and the letter bleeds, the house itself begins to murmur. It tests the air with syllables, rolling them across its beams, brushing them across the ears of sleepers. A voice not yours will whisper from the dark, say it, say her name. Give yourself to us. Some resist, some answer. All are remembered only by the house. The air within is thick with forgetting. Pictures on the walls are smudged, their faces warped beyond recognition. Journals left behind lose their signatures, the ink eaten away until the words collapse into blank lines. Even graves upon the hill bear only empty stones, their names scraped clean as though by unseen hands. And tonight, the hunger grows bold. The cellar door yawns wider, its frame bending as if to invite. The stairs creak, though no one treads them. From below rises a sound, soft, wet, patient, the sound of lips forming names one after another, a roll call of those who vanished. Each name spoken is stolen again, devoured, leaving the world above emptier, hollower. In the parlor, the letter rests upon the table, its pulse louder than before. The lantern glows through the floorboards, painting the ceiling with writhing shadows. And the mirror hums, its surface slick with shapes pressing closer. All the cursed relics lean toward the cellar, as if drawn by gravity, as if summoned by the house itself. The walls groan. The beams shiver. And the voices rise. They whisper names that have not yet been spoken. Names of those still outside, still living, still unclaimed. They press against the ears of any who stand near the threshold, soft as a mother's call, cruel as a grave's promise. You are ours already. Step in. Forget yourself, the candle gutters. The floorboards creak. The cellar breathes in, long and deep, and then faint, wet and certain, a single sound drips upward from the dark. Your name, spoken perfectly, waiting for your mouth to answer.